Wesley and Will.
Welcome to another episode of Other Side News. I'm Wesley.
I'm Will.
And on February 17th, 2017, I will receive a movie that I have been waiting 15 years for. I first became aware of The Dark Tower when I was 20 years old. I read the Drawing of the Three, which oddly enough was the second book in the series. I just picked it up. I was at the library looking for something to read. I was bored. I liked Stephen King already. So I picked this up. Absolutely loved it. Went back, read the first book, and then went through the journey, the long absence between book 4 and book 5. There was like nothing.
And people complaining about
God.
Martin.
Yeah, people were... Stephen King actually received threats about this. The cutest being one he wrote about in one of his books of someone who sent him a Polaroid of a teddy bear with a knife to its throat and said, "Release the Dark Tower 5 or the bear gets it." People loved this. I was one of them. I was a huge fan. I've read the series 3 times, and I was very excited to hear that it was finally getting a movie, and then that movie was canceled,
right?
And now it's back. Some people seem excited about it. Some people seem leery about it. The basic gist is this, that The Dark Tower coming out in February is not an adaptation of the book. It's basically a continuation of the story.
Spoiler.
Yeah. There's gonna be huge spoilers for the Dark Tower novels if you haven't read them, because essentially the world of the Dark Tower is a loop. At the end of the 7th book, Roland Deschain, your protagonist of the story, he reaches the Dark Tower, he climbs it, and as he approaches a door that's in the final room, it occurs to him that he has found the door that he always looks for, and it's the door he always finds. When the door opens, he notices the desert on the other side.
There's a painting of that in the mist, isn't there, of him standing in front of the door?
Yes. Actually, the painting in the mist is almost the cover of the Dark Tower 7, with Roland standing in front of the Dark Tower. So he notices the desert, and that's when it occurs to him. He has made this journey before. Countless times before. He always gets there, he always goes through the door, and when he goes through the door, he is cast back, not to the very beginning of his journey, where he thinks things could possibly be changed, but to the desert where he was pursuing the Man in Black. That it's essentially he is doomed to repeat this over and over again.
I've already made the donuts.
Yeah, and that's what is essentially holding reality together, because the Dark Tower is this nexus that holds everything together. If it falls, reality comes apart. And so essentially it's his journey that's keeping it going. But also, it does say that perhaps there's a chance of redemption, because at the end of the book, when he's in the desert, he has his father's horn, which he didn't have originally. So it shows that some alterations can be made, and that maybe one day he'll do everything exactly right, or something will go just the right way, and he'll finally find peace. And that's where I see this movie taking off. Only one issue on IMDb, I did see Alex McGregor playing Susan Delgado. Now, granted, she's only 23, 24 years old, so I'm hoping that she's in a flashback, because in the book, Susan Delgado died by being burned at the stake when she was 16. She was Roland's first love, he was 14, and I hope she's a flashback, because for me, Susan has to die. It's integral in who Roland is, because he always felt that he chose the tower over her. It sets him up, that he puts the tower ahead of everything else. He is cold, he is ruthless, he does have compassion, but don't get in the way of his mission.
Now his primary reason for going to the tower is
because the tower is falling. And if the tower falls, reality as we know it ends. He doesn't know what will happen, but the land Roland comes from is Gilead, and he saw that land be destroyed already. He saw, Roland is hundreds of years old, and through different means, but he's seen the effects firsthand of what is happening to reality, and that's why he's so determined to reach the tower and try and save it. Basically by slaying the Crimson King, which, if you see in this picture here of Matthew McConaughey playing the Man in Black, that sign right there, that's the mark of the Crimson King. It has nothing to do with the Illuminati.
No.
All right.
So that's what I'm excited about. Matthew McConaughey,
yes,
awesome actor.
This character,
The Man in
Walter,
Black.
is tailor-made to Matthew McConaughey. I think he is going to do an outstanding job in this role.
Now, his whole purpose is he wants to get to the tower.
Yeah.
And see what?
Well, the Man in Black
He's
in the
gonna
books just wanted to get to the tower. He just wanted to climb to the top and see if there was a god.
So he doesn't want to destroy it.
No, he doesn't give a shit. He figures it's going to fall either way. The Man in Black was very much... He was kind of he's described in the book as a man who titters. You know, he just kind of finds everything funny. A good example of the Man in Black in the first book is when he brings a man who has died back to life and locks away his memory of what he saw on the other side, but then gives him a special word. Says if someone says the word 19 to you, you're going to remember everything that you saw in the afterlife, and you're going to tell them. But telling them will drive them insane. And then he tells one person in the town what the word is. And he says, you'll try your whole life not to say this word, but eventually you'll say it. That's the Man in Black. He's just a dick.
Wow.
You know, in the movie, it seems like he's after Jake Chambers, who another character from the book, who's a psychic, and the Man in Black, along with a couple other characters that were really big in the books. Pimley being one of them. He was the master of Blue Heaven, where they kept the breakers. Breakers being psychics who were breaking the beams that are holding the tower up. You break the beams, tower falls, reality ends.
So one of these psychics, are they forced to do it, or are they...
They're some of them are forced to do it, but as one of them, Dinky Earnshaw, who makes his first appearance in the Stephen King collection, Everything's Eventual, he says it's basically like a drug, you know, that you want to break. You want to use your power. He says it's like an artist and you take away his paints. He's going to cut himself open. He'll paint with his blood. You know, if it's in you to do that, you're going to satisfy that craving. So he's a character, but also Sayer, who's a big character, who's kind of like the Man in Black, Walter's right-hand man. So he's a big character to be in this. I was disappointed that we're not going to see Susanna Dean or Eddie Dean yet, but... hopefully the movie does well and they can bring them back into the story. That'd be great to see them. But yeah, so anyway, so Walter's after Jake Chambers because Jake, in the books, was psychic. I guess in the movie they might make him more so than he was in the book to make him such a prize, but they want to add him to the collection of breakers. Roland, I'm not sure how he'll discover Jake in this movie. In the book, Jake died in his world and was reborn in Roland's world. And that's how he
movie's gonna
ended
be a trip.
up. The books were a trip. Books were big into, you know, alternate realities, parallel dimensions, you know, because, well, the Dark Tower contained everything.
Right.
So that's why the book spread over basically every book Stephen King, almost every book Stephen King ever wrote, was connected to the Dark Tower. Randall Flagg, the villain in The Stand, is Walter. You know, it's the same guy.
Wow.
You know, that's what I mean. He's just a dick. You know, he just does things. All at the behest of the Crimson King, which was until he was defeated, not by Roland, but by Patrick Danville, a character from Insomnia, who basically erases the Crimson King from existence. Literally, he draws him and then he erases him.
Wow.
But yeah, so until he's brought down, you know, the Crimson King was the boogeyman of the Stephen King universe. So anyway, so that's what Walter's purpose seems to be in this movie, is he's trying to find Jake, but he's really doing the same purpose he did in the books. He's working for the Crimson King. He's an agent of the King. Now, the most controversial thing coming out of this, of course, is the casting of Idris Elba as Roland Deschain. Because Roland Deschain in the books is described as being a blue-eyed white man. You know, or according to Detta Walker, one of the villains in Drawing of the Three, the Honk Muffa is what she calls him.
Right.
And so that has stirred up some controversy. I personally don't care too much. I'm hoping that the decision was made on who they felt was best to play the role. That they were looking for a good actor.
Right.
You know,
Well,
and the fact that Stephen King is a producer,
Right.
you know, and he's at the stage where I don't think too much is getting dictated to him. I think every change, everything that's happening with this, he's going to have a huge say in fact, he was adamant that the movie starts in the desert. The movie begins, the Man in Black fled across the desert, the gunslinger followed. Because that's where the story always starts.
Being with, like, a loop and alternate time change, and things change every time.
And perhaps that's part of it. I just know that
so in the next
everything...
in the next movie, he could be a white guy.
Well, I just know of everything, that's what I've heard the most about, is the casting in that role. I personally...
If you own the role, you own it.
Yeah, as long as he does a good job, I don't care.
Right.
But you have to project Roland, which what Roland is if you've ever seen The Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood, in the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns, that is the origin of Roland. That's where the inspiration for him came from, is that character.
Yeah,
that's who he is.
And everything.
You know, that's why if this movie had been made in the 80s, Clint Eastwood would play Roland. That's when this should have happened, you know, because that's who he is.
So what's high speech?
High speech is the language that they spoke in Gilead. It's the language of the gunslingers. And what a gunslinger is a gunslinger is a whole mythos of its own. In Roland's world, Arthur, yes, that one, King Arthur was a thing. He was the first gunslinger.
Huh.
You know, back then they didn't use guns, but he was called Arthur Eld. And he took many different, he had many different brides, and he basically fought back the evil, not the evil, but the magic, what was called the Prim, chaos, disorder, discordia, stuff like that. And he kind of united everyone, and of his offspring, one of them was the Crimson King. So that's why the Crimson King feels entitled to the tower, is just like Roland is a descendant of Arthur Eld, so is the Crimson King. So they're connected in that way, and the high speech was the language of the gunslingers. They were basically knights, they were peacekeepers, and at the center of it, which is what keeps it driving, and I think why Stephen King was able to incorporate so many weird elements into one story, is the central drive of the story is Roland relentlessly seeking the tower. He becomes aware of the tower, like I said, when he was 14 years old. That's when he has a vision of it, and he learns that it's falling. And he becomes, from that moment, obsessed with reaching the tower and trying to prevent it from happening. It's a wonderful story, and I'm excited, especially with all the different characters that are apparently going to be appearing in this first movie. And they do have Jake's parents are cast in this movie, so I'm assuming that Jake will be in a different world than Roland when this movie begins. I don't know if he'll get to Roland's world the same way, or if they'll continue on, because in the first book, Roland sacrifices Jake to continue. And Jake comes back in the third book. Jake dies a lot in the Dark Tower, so I wish all the best for old Tom Taylor playing Jake, because Jake has a rough go in the Dark Tower, but he was one of my favorite characters in the story. He was great. He ends up becoming kind of Roland's adopted son as it goes on. So I'm super excited for this movie, to see this story, and to see not an adaptation, because I didn't want to be that guy, like the Lord of the Rings fan, that's going to be sitting in the theater going, that didn't happen, didn't happen, that's wrong. See, with them continuing, I can't do that, because there's a brand new story,
this is gonna be
in and of itself.
Don't mess it up so we can get a bunch of them.
I want to see a complete story, I hope to, and it's just, I've been waiting a long time, and I'm really hoping this does a good job, so finally the Talisman will be made, because that's another one I've been waiting a long time for, and I think Universal's owned the rights to the Talisman for 20 years, but Stephen King won't let them make the movie.
Yeah, it's amazing how long certain movies, we bitch and complain about reboots all the time.
There have been a lot of movies that have been in developmental hell.
Developmental
for hell. Because, you as a studio, it makes sense. Something's popular, you buy it. We got the rights to make this movie, but then you just got to find time to make that movie.
So, Dark Towers, February 17th, 2017.
Very excited.
It's going to be awesome.
Yes, it is. All right.
This is The Other Side. We're out.